DFS DJ Nation, what is up? What is happening? We are on to week 3. We have some decent matchups this week, some high totals, but some kind of one-sided matchups as well. So we'll have to get through that. Then we have one game that has a 54-point total
Mhm.
where everybody's going to go play. So,
Yep.
so with that being said, Maddie, how you doing?
Doing well, man. It's good to be recording this while there's not a good game going on. Sometimes we have some barn burners happening where it's, between two good teams while we record, and it's kind of tough to do the show while trying to watch with while watching the game out of the corner of your eye. But with this one, San Francisco continues to move the ball and the Giants keep kicking field goals. So I think San Fran's going to pull this one out. But doing well. 2 for 2 on cashing so far this year. So we're looking to make this 3 for 3 going into week 3.
Yeah, so let's just go ahead and get into it. Let's start with the quarterback position. As always, we go position by position. And so let's start with the quarterback position. And up top, we have two quarterbacks that are in the 8K range. That is Patrick Mahomes at 83 and then Josh Allen at 81. And then we have a few quarterbacks here in the 7K range: Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert, Justin Fields, and Tua Tagovailoa. And then in the 6K range, you have Kirk Cousins, Trevor Lawrence, a questionable Anthony Richardson, and then Dak Prescott, Jared Goff, Deshaun Watson. So in this 6K and above range, where are you looking to
go? So I'm pretty much down to, I think, Cousins and Tua are the two QBs that I have a ton of interest in. They're pretty much priced right next to each other. Cousins is going to probably be 5 times as popular as Tua is. Like, I would expect in smaller field tournaments that Cousins is probably going to approach 20%. Because like you said, that game has a 54 total and is much higher than any other game on the slate. And with Cousins being cheaper and with how much Minnesota's throwing the ball and everybody's going to play Jefferson, I think that, Cousins is just such an easy stacking partner for that game. So I think a lot of people are going to go Cousins. I expect Herbert to be popular too, but I side with Cousins and Tua, two teams that should be able to throw the ball a ton and throw it effectively. This Denver Broncos defense looks horrid for whatever reason. In week 1, Jacoby Myers took them out to the woodshed, and Devontae Adams was able to have some production as well. So they got carved up by Jimmy G. And we just saw the Washington Commanders hang 35 on Denver as well. And Sam Howell looked good through the air against them. So good luck stopping Tua and Tyreek and Jalen Waddle and all those guys if Denver can't even stop the Raiders and Washington. So I'm expecting Miami to be much lower owned than Minnesota as a whole. Like the Cousins, Jefferson, Hawkinson stack should be really, really popular this week. Hawkinson a little less so, but definitely Cousins to Jefferson. And I think you're going to see Tyreek because it is tough. You have to sacrifice to be able to do it. It is tough to fit Tyreek and Jefferson in the same team. And I think with them being priced right next to each other at 9K, you're going to have to make a decision on which of the two. And I think most people are just going to side with Jefferson because he's in the 54-point total. So it definitely makes me have a ton of interest in Tua and Tyreek there in that game. So I like Tua and Cousins up top. Anything above 6K. And then if you want to play devil's advocate and think that there's not a QB that goes for 30 plus on this slate, I don't hate some of the 5K options either. So Ritter came out last week and put up almost 25 points because he had a rushing touchdown. And, when we have these rushing QBs, they don't really have to do that much. So if Ritter finds the end zone again with his legs, I mean, all of a sudden we're going to be flirting with 20 plus points again, and he's only 5K. And he's at home, or not at home, but he's in only a 3.5 point spread against Detroit in the Dome. And it's a 46.5 point total. So, I know that the Falcons are going to try to lean on the run as much as they can, but at some point, it seems like Ritter's going to be good plays in games that they're trailing because in week 1, he barely scored any fantasy points. And that's a game they won by 2 scores and they had to mount a comeback. And They were down by 12 heading into the fourth quarter, and that's a game where he scored 20 plus. So I think, being in Detroit here, and Detroit's got a good offense and can put up points, I could see this being a little bit back and forth, and Vegas has it only as a 3.5 point spread. So I think Ritter is interesting, and you don't even have to stack him with anybody. You can play him naked because of how cheap he is and because of his rushing ability. So he's interesting. And then if we um, keep an eye on the weather in the Baltimore Indy game, because we have over here on the East Coast, we've got that tropical storm that's rolling through this weekend, and winds are supposed to be like 20 to 25 mile an hour in Baltimore on Sunday. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on. But if that starts to die down or like phase out earlier than expected, I don't even hate Gardner Minshew at 5,100 against Baltimore. Baltimore's got some banged up pieces on their defense, and I expect their offense to be able to move it really easily. Baltimore's, and so Minshew should have to throw the ball a ton here. And Minshew, if you go back and look at his starts from 2021, and then even his couple ones he had last year, like he shredded the Dallas defense last year in that game that he started for Hurts against Dallas. He put up 28 fantasy points against Dallas, which is arguably one of the best defenses in the NFL. So that game ended up being like a 40-34 shootout for Dallas and the Eagles, and it's the same offensive coordinator that he had last year, where he was able to do that. And it's a very similar style playbook and personnel grouping with the receivers as to what. And yes, I know Pittman and Downs and those guys are not Devontae Smith and AJ Brown, but they're definitely able to make some big plays. They're still talented receivers. So I like Minshew if the weather cooperates, and I would definitely side with him over Ritter. But yeah, if you need the value QB to be able to play the Tyreek and Jefferson guys together, I really don't hate Ritter, and then again Minshew if weather cooperates.
So for me, I think that I'm going to be interested to see where Patrick Mahomes' ownership percentages come in, because if it's low, which I think it probably will be, especially being that he is the highest price quarterback on the slate, $8,300. This is a home matchup against Chicago, and this team is in absolute shambles. They're out. Their defensive coordinator stepped down. There is all of these. You got Justin Fields out here talking about the coaches. I mean, it is a dumpster fire. Then today, DJ Moore, they showed a clip of him talking to Devin White from the Buccaneers, saying that they're not using you correctly, and DJ Moore responding with "Tell me about it." Like, it
Yeah,
is a absolute dumpster fire. And this feels like a game that the Chiefs could absolutely steamroll them. Now there is the concern that they get up quickly and then things shift a little bit. Andy Reid goes into conservative mode because that is what Andy Reid does. But they got to get there somehow, and he's $8,300. One of the highest totals on the slate here for the Chiefs. They have the highest implied point total at 30.25. This is still a 48-point total here in this game. Now, obviously, the Chiefs carry most of that, but I do think Patrick Mahomes, if he's going to come in low owned, especially after the performance they had last week, and this offense really hasn't hit all cylinders yet, I think this could be kind of that get right game where Patrick Mahomes just goes nuclear. And if he's going to be under owned comparatively to Justin Herbert and Kirk Cousins, then I think I'm going to be about uh, that situation here with this game. So I love Patrick Mahomes at $8,300. That's not really breaking any news. Obviously, he's the best quarterback in the league, but so I do like getting to him. I do agree with you on Tua as well at 7K. This is also a team that has been throwing the ball a metric ton so far to start the season. Tua on the year has been throwing as top 10 and pass plays per game at 37 and a half pass attempts per game. And obviously, when you have the weapons that he has, he makes for a really solid play. But outside of the guys you didn't talk about, CJ Stroud, I have a lot of interest in. He's only $5,300 against Jacksonville, and Jacksonville has allowed the fourth most DK points so far to the position. And this is a team that is going to throw the ball a lot. CJ Stroud is third among all quarterbacks and pass plays per game, averaging 45 and a half pass plays per game. So the volume's going to be there. Their offensive line is an absolute shambles. It does sound like Laramie Tunsil will return, but last week they missed 4/5 of their starting offensive line. You have Titus Howard, who is their right tackle, who is on IR. Their center that they drafted is on IR. Kenyon Green, their starting left guard, is on season-ending IR, and then last week Larry Tunsil didn't play, but it does sound like Larry Tunsil is trending towards playing. But all that being said, they cannot get anything going on the ground. Damian Pierce has been able to do absolutely nothing. And so they have just opted to throw the football. And this is a game that they're definitely probably going to be trailing in. And CJ Stroud has actually looked really good. He's coming off a performance last week where he threw, for over 384 yards. He had 25 DK points last week, and he's only $5,300. The matchup is going to be there. The pace is going to be there of this game. And so I do like CJ Stroud at only $5,300. You can easily pair him with a Nico Collins or a Tank Dell. There are pass catching options here for you, or even a Robert Woods, though I think he's much lower ceiling. But Nico Collins has been fantastic so far to start the year. Even some of his reception perception stuff from Matt Harmon has highlighted how well he's done. That he has shades of T. Higgins right now. That's kind of what he looks like and how he has been playing. And so I do think that this passing offense is one you can exploit, especially as cheap that it is, because getting a quarterback here that's going to throw the ball this much at only $5,300 is something that I think people should be interested in. And his pass catchers are cheap. Nico Collins is $5,300, so that is not going to be anything. And then Tank Dell is only $3,600 here.
That's a complete misprice. So last week the Josh Reynolds flag plant play of the week. This week it's Tank Dell. Like it's just a misprice. It's a misprice.
Yeah. And so I think $5,300 in doing so, it allows you to pay up at other positions that you really want to get to, especially like if you want to get Tony Pollard in here, who is going against the Cardinals. Like it allows you to really pay up and opens up the rest of your lineup to be able to do this. So I do really like going with this. And then if you want to run it back, there's a lot of great options on the Jaguars side. I think Calvin Ridley could bounce
Calvin
back.
Ridley week.
Right. And so it makes it very easy to be able to stack up this game and a game that could be have some shootout potential here. And so I really like CJ Stroud at his price.
Yeah, no, I definitely don't hate that at all. I guess it just gets uncomfortable on how much you want to load up on the Texans, but I mean, I agree with everything you said. They're free essentially. And he's throwing the ball over 40 times a game. And Collins and Tank Dell look like they're going to both be on pace for 10 plus targets each every game if he's throwing the ball that much. Yeah, and I mean, he did it against Baltimore in week 1. I know, granted, week 2 was Indy, which anybody can throw the ball in Indy, apparently. But against Baltimore in week 1, Stroud still had that volume and was semi-efficient with it. Obviously wasn't as good as he was in week 2, but I mean, like you said, the Jags pass D hasn't been great either. I mean, they've been fine. So yeah, it's interesting to load that up. I definitely think so. Right now, if I had to rank my favorite, like correlated stacks, Tank Dell and Calvin Ridley is at the top of my list.
Yeah. Other than that, I think some of the other options you have here kind of like in the mid 5K range, like it just doesn't do a lot for me. Like this Seattle Carolina game is kind of gross to me. Like it's not really all that
Yeah.
exciting. I know JC Horn is out, but their defense actually looked pretty decent against the Saints this past week. And I don't know, like it just doesn't do a whole lot for me. Then you have Russell Wilson on the other side of this Miami game, and you've been able to definitely throw the ball against the Miami Dolphins so far to start the year. But at the same time, like I'm just not all that excited to play Russell Wilson or right now. I mean, he's coming off a big game against Washington where he had 30 DK points, but I mean, I don't know. I'm just not all that excited about that game either. And so, like, to me, I think it really comes down to like I'm definitely going to have some exposure to the Vikings and Giants game, or the Vikings and the
Chargers.
Chargers game. I don't know why I said
You have to
Yes.
have exposure to that game. Do not
Yes,
make
yeah.
a single team this week that does not have a player from that game. The offenses are too good, and especially the Vikings it's just too concentrated. Like I personally would set a rule that I would have one of Hawkinson or Jefferson on every team, if not both.
Yeah. So that being said, I don't really have a lot else to talk about when it comes to other quarterbacks. Like I don't really have much interest in Josh Allen at his price. Lamar Jackson, I think, is fine, but especially if you're dealing with some weather here. Justin Fields, I guess, would be the other one because I think it could go either way because like he's talks a lot this week about just wanting to just play free and not be limited and play like a robot. And this could be a game where maybe they just unleash him and nobody's going to play him. Now I'll say this on the other side: the Chiefs' defense has been quietly elite. They only allowed 14 points to Jared Goff week one,
Mm-hmm.
and then that was without Chris Jones. And then last week they get Chris Jones back and they limit the Jaguars to what 9 points or whatever.
Yep.
And this defense has been really, really good. And really, what we've seen so far with with way teams have handled the Bears is they're just not rushing them. They're not sitting. They're not blitzing them at all because Justin Fields has shown no ability to be able to read a defense, and he sits back there too long. And eventually, their 4-man rush has been able to get back there and get pressure on because he's still getting sacked at a high rate. It's just he's not doing. He's just not able to read defenses properly. But teams aren't out there rushing him, forcing him out of the pocket, and we'll see if anything changes because they've only had 4 design runs so far to start the year. That is not enough for what Justin Fields can bring to the table. They've completely neutered him as a runner, and so that has killed his upside. But in a game where they're going to be trailing, I do think Justin Fields is at least interesting because he's going to carry no ownership whatsoever.
Yeah, I'm out on Justin Fields.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Like, it's not a play. Like, it's depending on how many lineups you play. Like, if you're just gonna play like a single entry or a 3 entry max, something like that. Yeah, I'm not playing Justin Fields. But
If
if you're looking at a 20 point or something like that, I think.
I definitely do think I want to be early on Fields because I think at some point he is going to start running more. I just don't know that it's this week.
Yeah. So, all right. Is there any other quarterbacks you really want to talk about? I guess let me ask you this: if you had to take a stand on one side or the other of that Chargers game, which quarterback would you rather play, Herbert or Cousins?
Cousins. They're throwing the ball 80% of the time. I think Madison doesn't look good. And we know where the Minnesota production is going. It's going to Jefferson and Hawkinson for the most part. I know Addison has looked good, but he's not going to score a touchdown on 30% of the snaps every single week. I mean, Osborne is still kind of splitting time with him. So it's really Cousins, Jefferson, Hawkinson. You know where the ball's going. On the Chargers side, they can just do so many weird things. Like Kelly can score. They played a backup running back, that mixed in with Kelly last week. Parham can score. Everett can score. Mike Williams can score. Keenan Allen can score. Josh Palmer can score. There's just so many different ways that the Chargers can beat you up. So it just gets really frustrating trying to stack Justin Herbert. But it makes me like Josh Kelly a lot this week, especially after his performance last week. So I do really like Mike Williams as well. We'll talk about when we get to receivers, but you definitely want pieces from that game. But yes, if I had to pick one of the 2 QBs, it would be Cousins.
I think I'm actually more on the Justin Herbert side because we saw last week, and what we typically see from teams whenever you lose that pass catching back, you end up seeing teams, obviously air the ball out more. They're pushing the ball downfield more because you're not doing these short little dump offs and stuff like that, screen plays and all that type of stuff. And we've actually seen so far, Justin Herbert. One problem with him last year was his average depth of target was insanely low. It was like 6 something. This year, he is actually 5th highest in average depth of target so far to start the season. So that has been a positive to see. And we'll get to it when we get to the wide receivers, but they have been utilizing, especially last week, they've been utilizing Mike Williams and Keenan Allen much differently than what you'd expect here with Kellen Moore. But so, anyways, if you're good, let's go ahead and jump over to the running back position.
Yeah, I'm good.
All right, so at the running back position, you have Tony Pollard up here at 8K. You have Austin Eckler, that is a high, but I do not think he plays this week. He hasn't.
Yeah, I doubt it.
And they said there's no timetable for his return, so I do not expect him to play one bit. So Tony Pollard against Arizona, but I can only imagine what his ownership is going to be at 8K. But then you have Bijan at 7,800, Derrick Henry at 74, Travis Etienne at 6,900, Aaron Jones, who missed last week, but he did get in a limited practice today at $6,800. Ramondre, Jahmyr Gibbs, James Cook, James Conner, which is too ridiculously high, especially in this matchup. Kenneth Walker, Raheem Mostert at 6K. So, Cody, Cody? I'm so used to doing show with him. Maddie, what are you looking at here at the running back, especially up top?
I mean, if Montgomery sits, you have to play Gibbs, right?
I don't know. I don't think they're going to give him the targets are definitely going to be there, right? He had 9 targets last week.
Yep.
I don't think he's going to be like some bell cow. Like I think you're going to see Craig Reynolds get that opportunity. Like
But
I just I don't. But that's
I think
but
I think the targets will stay sticky. So like I would project 8 to 10 targets, especially if Amon Ra's dealing with turf toe. Um, like I would think the 8 to 10 targets would stay. Like he may not get 20 carries, but if he's getting targets, the carries don't have to be as high. So like even if he gets 8 to 10 carries as well, you're all of a sudden you're at six somewhere in the 16 to 20 opportunity range, and for a guy that's 6,600 with half of that coming through the air at a position that's really weak as it is, and he's explosive too, right? Like he's a lot like Aaron Jones, where you know even if he's not getting a ton of carries, he can house you know a couple of the passes or a couple of the carries that he does get. So I don't know. I feel like you have to play him. Like, how much are they going to really rely on Craig
no,
Reynolds?
he's definitely interesting. And if you look at right now, Jameer Gibbs over the first 2 games, he leads all running backs in target per out run rate at 37%. He has a 17% target share in the offense. He is running a route on 41%. But the thing is the not the downfall, but he's only received so far 23% of the running back rush attempts so far to start the season. Now some of that obviously is especially their week 1 usage where they didn't really utilize him at all as a
Right.
runner. But yes, it is super encouraging to see what they did with him there. I would have thought though, like especially on the 2 minute snaps, he's only received 40% of those. I felt like he would have been more involved there, especially as good as a pass catcher. But that easily can change if as long as David Montgomery's out because we're
Right.
talking about Craig Reynolds now.
Right, exactly, and that's kind of the argument I'm making is they're not going to really just like Craig Reynolds isn't playing the David Montgomery role. I don't think like he's going to be mixed in for sure because they're not just going to run Gibbs into the ground. But I don't think he's going to give Craig Reynolds ain't going to go out there and carry the ball 18 times. If he does, then I guess so be it. I'll just lose. Um, but I mean, even if he does, Gibbs can still get there on his touches because of how good he is. Like I said, he reminds me a lot of the Aaron Jones usage in Green Bay, where it's always a second guy there that's just eating into it. But and we would love to have him by himself, but that's just the reality of it is that's not just not going to be a thing for a lot of these backfields. So getting the even Atlanta, like Bijan Robinson is splitting pretty much down the middle with Tyler Algier, and Bijan's just so talented, and I know he had 24 touches last week, and he's a good player on the other side of that game too. I like Bijan a lot, and I don't think anybody's going to play him because, like you said, I think everybody's going to flock to Pollard at 8K against Arizona. So I think Bijan's really interesting, and absolutely have interest in Gibbs, assuming Montgomery's out. I'm going back to ETN. I played him last week. It didn't work out against Kansas City, but Houston has been just obliterated on the ground 2 weeks in a row so far to start the year. We saw the the ghost of Zach Moss come back from injury and just annihilate them in week 2. So you have to have interest in ETN. He has an absolutely elite role. He's getting every opportunity that there is to get in that offense for the running backs. So 6,900 for a guy that's pretty much not coming off the field unless he's got cramps is somebody I have heavy interest in. So I like ETN as well. Scrolling down, I know you mentioned you didn't really have interest in the QBs for the Carolina Seattle game, but I think the running backs in that game are interesting on both sides. Especially Chuba Hubbard. If Sanders were to somehow miss, I think he popped up with a Q tag this week, so definitely something to monitor because Sanders is definitely he's got a good role and he scored 11 touchdowns last year. So I wouldn't necessarily consider him as not a touchdown scorer. So I think the touchdowns will come for Sanders. It's a good matchup against Seattle. And same on the flip side for Kenneth Walker against Carolina. Carolina just allowed the first 2 rushing touchdowns of Tony Jones Jr.'s career against them on Monday night. So I definitely like Kenneth Walker at home. Consider me probably out on Mostert after his blow up game in prime time. You can run on Denver a little bit, but I just don't know that role, or I don't know that production is going to you know, be there again for Mostert in back-to-back weeks. He scored 3 touchdowns in 2 weeks. So I think they're going to continue to attack teams through the air. So I'll probably be out on Mostert this week. I'm assuming he's going to be a little popular. One guy I'm interested in and curious to hear your thoughts. If everybody is going to load up Cousins, Jefferson, Hawkinson, we know the Chargers' run D is awful. Do you have any interest at all in Alexander Madison?
So obviously they went out and traded for Cam Akers. Um, I don't think though, like week 1 or the first week here, Cam Akers is gonna
Right.
come right in and like
I
really
agree.
have much of a role. Though he's going to be familiar with this offense, though. I will say that. So if you look at Alexander Madison on paper, he looks like a smash play because he is playing 74% of the snaps. He's received 73% of the RB rush attempts. He is running a route on 54% of plays, and he has a 17% target per route run rate and 11% target share. So you look at that and you say, okay, well, that he has been the bell cow. And I think at least for one more week, he probably has that role, but it does make me nervous because he's also been terrible,
Right.
and he has just
Yep.
been awful. He has not been efficient, and so like the workload is there for him, but I don't know if I don't know if he's going to be able to capitalize on it. Let me put it that way. I would expect Cam Akers is going to play, but I just don't think it's going to be like any sort of a massive role. I think it's going to be something they're going to have to work into to be able to for that to come to fruition. But I think on paper he's fine, but I don't know how much, especially at his price is
Yeah.
$5,800. It's not egregious, but like the other running backs that are there, like I know you mentioned Raheem Mostert, and I get it. Maybe it's a little bit point chasing, but he is handling all of the opportunity in this backfield.
He
Like
is.
he is right now handling in terms of he's playing 73% of the snaps, almost 60% of the RB rush attempts, and he is running 66% of the routes
Yep. No, he
right now.
definitely is.
And so the role is 100% there, and it's not. I'm not really afraid of the Denver Bronco run defense, and so he's not egregiously priced at 6K. He hasn't been involved in the passing game, and I don't know why. Despite the fact he's running routes,
Because
he's
Tua's
not being
chucking it deep.
targeted at all. Yeah,
Tua's
so
not
he's only
checking
seeing
down.
a 4% target share within
Yeah.
the offense, and so that is a little discouraging. Um, but like, I don't mind. I think you could take shots on Alexander Madison. Like, I don't think he is like grossly.
I think both of those guys are fine. I don't think either of them like crush to where if you didn't play them, they bury you. But I think they both have decent games. That's Madison and Mostert.
Yeah, I mean, he could easily find the end zone. He has
Yeah.
been involved in the passing game, so he could see some there. Like he's not going to kill you if you play him. Like I think he,
What about Josh Kelly?
and I don't mind him either, but he's not going to see. I don't think like. So he saw one target last week. Like he's not a target earner. Like he's not going to see that, and so he's going to have to find the end zone to
Which
to
can.
make it work, right?
We saw DeAndre Swift annihilate Minnesota.
Right, but like I don't think. I mean, DeAndre Swift is a hashtag good running back. I don't know if Josh Kelly is.
I don't
And it
know.
feels
Kelly
like
looked solid week one.
yeah. I mean, but that was
We kind of have to throw out week two because it's Tennessee, right? Like Tennessee literally just
oh,
shuts down.
absolutely, 100.
They
percent
shut
Yeah,
down everybody.
yes.
So if you look at Kelly last year, he actually was heavily involved in the pass game. Like he was obviously the RB2 to Eckler last year, but he had still having games where he was catching 3 to 4 passes a game. So like he can do it. I just think, I think I'm on the side for both running backs in that game where I have interest if they're not popular, but if they are popular, I'm probably out. Um, but I think Kelly definitely has a better path to smash than Madison does from that game.
See, because I actually have a lot of interest in Isaiah Pacheco. He's $5,400. He's also really
Interesting, even
cheap.
with a hamstring injury.
So it's not a hamstring injury. People keeps calling it a hamstring. It's a bruise. Like he didn't pull a hamstring. It's not a strain. He has a bruised hamstring. Is
He
what
missed
it
practice with a hamstring, is the reports.
Right. Right. But
I
if
know
you
he was
heard
back
Andy
today.
Reid talk, Andy Reid said that it's a contusion, it's a bruise. And so, uh, but he's back. He was back at practice today, and so he practiced today. So he's gonna play 100%. And at $5,400, and Bears defense is absolutely dreadful.
It's
Like,
bad.
and so like this feels like a
That's
perfect
why the
game
defensive
for
coordinator resigned.
yeah for Pacheco. And so I do have some interest in playing him at $5,400. And
I
then
mean, I don't hate it. I was gonna if Pacheco was gonna be ruled out, I was gonna click all the freaking Edwards-Helaire, Jerick McKinnon. So I really don't hate it. I mean, the matchup's really good. So are you
I,
playing Ford against Tennessee? Or are you out on Tennessee?
absolutely not. I don't want to play any running
It's
back against the
dude,
Titans.
dude,
Like
it's the
none.
third week in a row that the running back against the Titans chalk. Week 1 we had Jamal Williams. Week 2 we had Joshua Kelly, and now week 3 we have Ford.
That was stupid. You know how much Joshua Kelly I had last week?
I had
0.
0. I had 0.
Yeah. Like, and I'll have 0 Jerome Ford.
You
And I
just
like
don't
Jerome Ford. I think
yeah,
long term, like he's a good option, but not this week. I'm not.
you
Like
just don't play running backs against Tennessee.
yes, they have. I think they've allowed it's like 7.9 DK points per game. They've allowed less than 50 yards rushing per game. Like
Yep.
this is not a good matchup whatsoever. Like, and I want no part of Jerome Ford in this matchup.
I agree.
I guess we didn't talk about it, and I know he's looked terrible, but do you have any interest in Deshaun Watson? Because that's how you
No.
beat Tennessee is through the air.
Nope. I'm good.
Yeah. Okay. I thought I'd ask. So other than that, like for me, like at running back, like I said, like I'm still going. I really don't really care all that much about the chalk of it. I'm gonna play Tony Pollard. It's just too good of a matchup against
Yeah.
Arizona, and his usage has been absolutely incredible so far to start the season for him. And he's done everything we were hoping he would do. 64% of the RB rush attempts, 65% of the rushing yards. He has 73% of the targets. And he also has 7 carries inside the 5-yard line. And if you want a little context for that, he had 9 all of last year. He already has 7 through 2 weeks. So, in Carolina, the Cardinals have been pretty mid against the running back position. And if you kind of peel back, if you look at just some of the basic numbers of like DK points allowed, like they're 14th, so it's not like fantastic. But you also have to remember that for last week, I mean, the Giants fell down incredibly quickly, and they
Yeah.
had built a big lead, and they had to throw the ball. So some of that I think is baked into that part of it. But I have no doubt that Tony Pollard can absolutely annihilate this Cardinals defense, and so it's going to be really hard to get away from him. I know he's going to be really chalky, but sometimes it's not a bad idea to eat the chalk because Tony Pollard could put up a 40 burger in this game against this defense, and then I also think if you can get up to him, Bijan Robinson. I know that
Yep.
he is splitting touches with Algier, but the dude is so incredibly
He had
explosive.
24 touches last week.
24 touches, yeah, last week. He's had 11 targets through the first 2 games of the season, and so and incredibly enough, he only has 1 touchdown, but I think that will change dramatically. So I do, if you want to pay up, I think those are the 2 options that I really want to do so with. And then past that, I'm just going to drop down. I do like the Kenneth Walker call at $6,200. I don't mind playing Raheem Mostert, and then if you want to get a little spicy, I think Alexander Madison is in play, as well as Isaiah Pacheco are the 2 guys that I kind of have interest in down in the lower range of the running back position.
Yep.
So, because like I know James Cook had a really big game last week, and people are going to be excited, about that. I want to follow that, but I just don't love the matchup against Washington. Washington's run defense is really good. But I do think Ramondre is kind of interesting, considering what he was, able to do last week. He should be more involved in the passing game. The problem that worries me here is I don't think the Jets can do anything to push him whatsoever to make him have to throw the ball more and
Right.
for him to be able to see more usage in the passing game in a game like this. So that's the only problem with that because I do like the price on Ramondre Stevenson. So, anyways, that's really the only thing I have to talk about with the running backs. Is there anybody else that we're missing or that we should talk about here?
I guess if you want to talk about the Saints, Kendre Miller, you playing him if he starts over Tony Jones Jr.? Because I mean, that's all they got at running back is those 2 guys.
Right.
And they're playing Green Bay, which is a horrible run defense. So
he's only 40. I mean, I think you probably could sprinkle him in. I guess that was probably you probably should definitely talk about him. He's only $4,300.
yeah,
I can only imagine. I mean, have you seen any ownership projections yet on
he's
this?
he's low.
That's surprising. I felt like he would be higher at his price because if I have to choose between the two of them, I would choose towards Kendra Miller because Tony Jones Jr. is not good, but he's only $4,500 as
Yeah, I'm
well.
seeing
So
both of them at 2%. So
yeah, I mean, if you want to take a stand on one of them, I definitely think Kendra Miller would be the guy that I would want to, and he's only $4,300. So maybe matching the field or being a little bit above the field on him, I think could be especially if we get any more information that who is going to be the lead back here in the situation, then I think he could be a pretty strong play.
yeah, I mean, running backs just filled with a bunch of guys that are just can do. I think have decent games. It just outside of the obviously the really good running backs at the top like Pollard and those guys can obviously bury you, but I just feel like a lot of these mid range guys can't really bury me for not playing them. Like if they get me 18 to 20, I'm like thrilled. So
Yeah,
punting our running back. Like if Miller finds the end zone, he gets 40 rush yards and scores, that's 10, and then catches two passes for 20 yards, all of a sudden he's at 14 at 4,300, like, and then if you pay for a 6K guy that gets you 18, you're doing better than, playing that 6K guy that got 18 or 20 if Miller were to find the end zone and get you 14. So I really don't hate it. So
yeah. All right, so let's go ahead and jump over to the wide receiver position. I think this is going to be a little more because the running back position is just in shambles right now, especially with all the injuries that we've seen, through the position. Not that all these guys are on here, but like Saquon, obviously Nick Chubb, that was absolutely brutal last week. And then we've had some of the other guys like Austin Eckler missing a lot of time. So it is in shambles right now. But the wide receiver position, on the other hand, is a little bit different where, you know, it's wild that on the running back side of it, the highest price running back is only 8K, but then, used to be the running backs were that way. Now it's kind of flipped where it was more rare to see a wide receiver in the 9K plus range, and we have two of them on the slate, and
yep.
rightfully so. It's Justin Jefferson and Tyreek Hill, and then you have a pretty decent drop down to Stephon Diggs at $8,100. Amon-Ra St. Brown is 79, who is dealing with a little bit of a turf toe here, but he got it in a limited practice today. Then you have CeeDee Lamb, Jalen Waddle, Calvin Ridley, Chris Olave, DK Metcalf, Garrett Wilson, who is incredibly overpriced at $6,800, Jerry Judy, Tyler Lockett, DeAndre Hopkins, Michael Pittman, and Mike Williams, rounding out the 6K and above wide receivers. So, how much are you going to look to pay up for a Justin Jefferson or Tyreek Hill? Or are you going to be looking to pay down a little bit further?
I will not have a team that. Well, I usually only play one team, but I would not have a team that does not have either uh, Jefferson or Hill, like one of those two at least. There are builds where you can make it work with both of them, but it is really tough, and you kind of get keyholed into certain value guys that everybody's going to play, like Tank Dell.
Just why you
So
play CJ Stroud? You play the CJ Stroud
yeah,
stack?
for sure. So I definitely think Tyreek and Jefferson. We don't really have to touch on them. Play one of them or both if you can make it work. Then moving down a little bit, I love Calvin Ridley this week. Debro shared on Twitter the other day that Stingley, uh, the Houston star corner, is out. I think he went on IR. So um, that's a big boost to Calvin Ridley because Houston's actually been solid through the air, like defending the pass this year. To start, they've just been abysmal on the ground. So, yeah, I like Calvin Ridley a ton. He's only 7,200 for a guy that can go for over 100 yards and one or two touchdowns. Um, he had a dud week last week, and when he was like projected to be one of the highest owned wide receivers on the slate, so I expect his ownership to kind of be in check this week because of that. I think everybody's going to pay up for one of the Jefferson, the Hill, and then go to that other side of that Minnesota game and play the Keenan Allens and the Mike Williams. Like I think that's where a lot of the ownership's going to come in is Jefferson, Allen, and Williams. I think that's your top three right there. So I'm out on Keenan Allen this week after his big week, and I know the usage is there, and he's actually been used downfield. And Mike Williams has actually been used in a more possession closer to the line of scrimmage role
In the
than
slot.
yeah, and in the slot. So yeah, like you said, it's kind of been flipped to what we're usually accustomed to. But Williams is kind of been the 1A, but Allen's been kind of the deep target. So um, you know if those 2 touchdowns to Keenan Allen go to Mike Williams last week, Mike Williams would not be 6K. And he's 6K against Minnesota. So I'm just not going to overthink that one. I don't really care what the ownership is. His role's too good. The matchup's too good. The talent's too good. I'm just going to play Mike Williams at 6K and I'm going to move on. I never play Keenan Allen when he's over 7K. So I probably won't this week. 7,500 is a little too rich for my blood for him. A guy that never goes over 30 points. And yes, I know he did it last week, but he scored twice. And so if you take the touchdown variance away for a guy that's going to be one of the highest owned wide receivers on the slate, I'm just going to play Mike Williams and probably Joshua Kelly and hope I get the touchdowns through those guys as opposed to Keenan Allen. So I really like Ridley, Mike Williams, Tyreek, and Jefferson if paying up at receiver. And then you already mentioned the 2 of the value guys that I like. That's Nico Collins at 5,300 and Tank Dell at 36. I just think the Tank Dell at 3,600, it's just a misprice. Hey, the guy he's pretty much a lock at this point, which is crazy to say because he's only played 2 games, but I'm not going to be burned. I did the waiting game on Puka, and I'm not going to do it again on Tank, but because the guy's he ran more routes than Nico Collins did in week 2, and it's because Noah Brown went on IR. If Noah Brown was still in the mix, that wouldn't be the case because we saw in week 1 Tank Dell wasn't as involved, but Tank Dell smashed in college. He's a clearly good receiver and has a connection with Stroud. Saw 10 targets, ran the most routes on the team. I'm just not overthinking it. 3,600 against the Jags, where they should be playing from behind, 8-point spread. I am definitely playing Tank Dell. So I just think it's a lock, just like Josh Reynolds was last week. The guy's just on the field too much. And you can even, speaking of Josh Reynolds, you can play him this week too. He's 4,200 in a game at home against Atlanta. Again, he continues to be a main factor in that offense as long as they're missing, one of, those big guys on the outside like Jamison Williams. Last year it was DJ Chark. So I'm going to continue to play Josh Reynolds until the wheels fall off when they get Jamison Williams back, but that's not this week. So so I'm pretty locked in at wide receiver. I feel like I don't necessarily know that you need to go, too far off the board at receiver this week. And I will say Zay Flowers is interesting too. He's used very close to the line of scrimmage, so I wouldn't let the whole wind thing throw you off too much there because he doesn't really get deep targets. So with how bad the Indy pass D is, I think Zay Flowers makes a ton of sense as well.
So things we'll have to monitor here this week with some injuries. One, what makes Tyreek Hill even more enticing is the fact that Jalen Waddle, he's probably not going to play this week. I mean, he hasn't practiced so far through the first 2 days of practice, and since he's in concussion protocol, I think that it's looking less and less likely that he is going to be able to play this game. So it's possible Tyreek Hill could see 15, 16, 17 targets in this game. Like, he is going to get all the work.
And Denver has been shredded by 2 bad offenses.
Yeah.
Oh, we won't call them bad. Okay, let me take that back. The Raiders and Washington aren't bad. They're like mediocre.
They're mid.
They're mid.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's gonna be hard to get away from Tyreek Hill in this match. If I can fit them both in, I'm gonna try to do that. That's gonna be my goal, is try to build some lineups with both of them in there, because they're both of their ceilings are absolutely incredible. And so, I think if we didn't have weather concern, I think Michael Pittman would be interesting because he is seeing a ton of volume as well. 23 targets over his past 2 games. He's been a pretty strong option here for this offense, and you're not really concerned one way or the other whether it's Anthony Richardson or Gardner Minshew is the backup quarterback here. But the weather here kind of worries me. But I will say I like a lot of Amari Cooper. I don't think you have to play him in a stack, whether it's a one-off at $5,700 against Tennessee. Tennessee has been really, really bad against the passing game, which is the same thing they had trouble with last year, and they really struggle with deep balls. And so, if you really want to kind of get off the beaten path and a little bit larger field of a tournament, I think Donovan Peoples-Jones, that's kind of his role within this offense, is only $4,100. Like, you could play some of him depending on if you could fit him in. But I'll also say a couple of things here that Zay Jones has yet to practice this week, so I think that actually makes somebody like Christian Kirk a lot more enticing because that was the problem last week or in week one was they were playing a lot of two wide receiver sets and Christian Kirk wasn't playing because it was Zay Flowers and uh, Calvin Ridley playing on both of those. So Christian Kirk's still only $5,400. So I do think that you could look his way as well as part of a stack or as a one-off option here. And then we're gonna have to monitor because Kadarius Toney has missed now back-to-back days, Wednesday, Thursday. As fragile as that dude is, him missing time. We did see, somebody that you did talk about last week, and I don't want to say it was like a monster performance because it wasn't, but at his price last week of only $4,100, Sky
Hmm.
Moore, 3 catches, 70 yards, and a score, 16 DK points. Like that plays all day. You'll take that at his price. And so, especially if Kadarius Toney misses, that's going to consolidate the target share a little bit. And so $4,400, he didn't really go up all that much. $4,400 Sky Moore. I think you could look there as well if you're looking for a little bit more of a cheaper option. And then Jaden Reed, even if Christian Watson plays, who's gotten in limited practice, he has run a ton in the slot so far, and I don't expect that to change. He saw 8 targets last week. His target per route run rate, he's been incredible so far in the first 2 weeks of the season. And so I do like Jaden Reed. I still think you can go there at only $3,800, though, as long as his ownership doesn't get crazy because he is coming off a bigger performance last week, 20 DK points for him. So you could look at that as well as another option if you're wanting to get a little bit cheaper at the wide receiver position.
Yeah, for sure. And also, if that weather in Indy clears up, I like Josh Downs as well. 3,500. He's shown explosiveness. He was another guy that was really good in college at UNC. Um, and Minshew's not going to run around as much as Richardson does, so there should be a little bit more pass volume there. Um, and again, Baltimore's dealing with some injuries in the secondary too. So yeah, if that weather starts to check out, I just really like that Baltimore Indy game. I'm just off of it for now because it looks like it's going to be a ton of rain and a ton of wind because the tropical storm rolling through. But again, if that clears out, ahead of schedule and it dies down a little bit, that game is really interesting for me. So
Yeah, and I think the other one too, lastly, would be, and I hate this. I hate myself for saying his name, but he's under 4K, and there's not a whole lot else people to throw the ball to here. And it's not Bryce Young that's going to be getting the start. It is
oh
going
god.
to be Andy Dalton. But Adam Thielen, he's only $3,900. I don't hate the matchup against Seattle. Seattle has struggled to stop opposing pass catchers. And he saw 9 targets last game, and they just don't have a whole lot else to throw the football to. And he's $3,900. Like he still has a little bit left to take. Andy Dalton was actually really good last year. I think a case could have been made that they shouldn't have even signed Derek Carr and they should have just kept Andy Dalton. He was actually really good last year for the most part, at least up to standards of Andy Dalton. I mean, not saying he was elite or anything like that, but I actually think it's probably an upgrade in terms of the passing department right now to have Andy Dalton starting this week. And so Adam Thielen could easily get peppered with some targets here from Andy Dalton. He's only $3,900. So, like, he's a cheaper option. He's probably going to see quite a bit of targets. Wouldn't surprise me at all if he saw 10 targets in this game. And so I do think Adam Thielen, I hate myself for it because I'm a bit of an ageist. I don't like really messing with old aging players, and that's what Adam Thielen is. But he still has a little bit left in the tank, still early in the season. And like I said, he had 20 DK points this past week at $3,900, just a little bit too cheap, I think, for the role that he currently has.
I'm not going to play Adam Thielen, but sure. You make a good
So
case.
yeah, I mean, he's an option anyway. But other than that, like I don't have a whole lot else that I really want to really mess with in the cheaper range of wide receivers. So
I'm right there with you, which makes paying down at running back or QB much more interesting because we like all these high price running backs and receivers, or well, receivers and tight ends for me.
yeah. So I mean, other than that, I mean, I think outside of that, I think let's go ahead and jump over to tight end. So at the tight end position, we have once again, as always, Travis Kelsey, who was $7,200. Then you have TJ Hawkinson of 65, Mark Andrews is 6K, and then Evan Ingram is $4,800. Pretty significant drop off there. And then Cole Kmet, $4,300. David Njoku, Hunter Henry, and Sam Laporta all wrap up the 4K and above range. Then guys like Kyle Pitts, Gerald Everett, Hayden Hurst, Dalton Schultz, Jake Ferguson, Juwan Johnson, Zach Ertz are all 3K. So where are you going with? Is there anybody that stands out to you that you really want to get in, or are you basically be focused on just playing the tight end, correlate the tight end with whoever the stack you're building?
Well, my first question is why is Cole Kmet the 5th highest priced tight end on any slate? But outside of that, I think one of the big three is going to break the slate. Personally, you got Andrews at 6K against Indy. Again, weather, but I mean he's not. Andrews isn't stretching the field, so wind doesn't impact him as much. Kelsey against Chicago, he's only 7,200, and sometimes we've seen Kelsey up to almost 8K. And then Hawkinson has been, since he came over to Minnesota, he's been one of the top 2, 3 tight ends in the league in terms of fantasy production and real life production. And he, gets a good matchup in the highest total game of the week. So I don't think I'm going to go to one of these cheaper guys because I truly think one or two, maybe if not all three of these guys, score 20 to 25 points, maybe even more. So I'm just going to jam in one of these three and try to get value elsewhere.
I do think there are a few options if you want to. Sam Laporta is only 4K. I do like paying down there. He has seen 11 targets over his last 2 games. He hasn't found the end zone yet, but I think that could easily change. Matchup against Atlanta. So I do think Sam Laporta at only 4K. Hunter Henry has had a really strong role so far to start this season. Almost 14 targets for him. He scored touchdowns in back-to-back weeks. He is still a little bit on the cheaper side. So I think both of those two, if you're wanting to pay down at the tight end position, you could look at that. You have Jake Ferguson, who has seen a ridiculous amount of end zone targets so far to start the season. Right now, he has seen what is it? I think 8 end zone targets right now. And the next closest is 4 among all tight ends right now. So has a really strong role there for Jake Ferguson. And so he is somebody I think you could easily look at. He's only $3,600 as well. So if you're really wanting to pay down, then you have guys like Luke Musgrave who they're running a lot of routes, but they're just not seeing the targets to follow that up for anybody like that. And so, but if you did want to, because he is out there, he's running a ton of routes, so he could be looked at as an option. So he would also be someone if you're really wanting to pay down at $3,300. I think that's as low as I would probably look to go here at the tight end position. But for the most part, I do agree. Trying to get your hands on one of these high priced tight ends, I think is a logical answer. Evan Ingram, $4,800, but then Hunter Henry and Sam Laporta, I'm going to have a lot of interest in just because of their price. So, especially if you're willing to pay off.
I will say I do like Ferguson against Arizona. We've attacked Arizona with tight ends, till we turn blue in the face. And I think Ferguson's the one guy down there that has a legit shot at catching 2 touchdowns. So I really don't mind Ferguson.
Yeah, I mean, he's up there too. I mean, he's top 3. Jake Ferguson is in target per route run rate so far to start the season. So
I don't
pretty
mind him.
strong.
Yeah.
It's just been the Cowboys haven't had to play anybody yet, and they've just absolutely annihilated everybody they've played so far. Though pour one out for Diggs today, who tore his ACL.
That sucks, man.
I mean, hey, at least you don't have to worry about him getting burnt all the time. So
well, it's easy to jump routes when you can rely on your pass rush to get to the quarterback in 3 seconds and know that there's no way in heck I got enough time to throw it deep. So you just jump every route and you just pick everything off.
That is true, but that is still a pretty decent blow here for
it is. Yeah, he was playing really well this year. I guess it's probably a good thing they signed Stephon Gilmore, huh?
Yeah. So, all right, let's go ahead and move over to defense, and we can just go ahead and move
Commanders.
all the way down to the bottom. What was that?
Commanders.
$2,400 against the Bills, especially with Josh Allen, who can has a habit of turning the football over. Yeah, I don't mind that.
East Coast game in the weather.
Yeah.
I don't think you can get me to play the Bears. I know they're min price, and even if I needed the 200, I don't think I could play the Bears against the Chiefs.
I know we don't really like paying up too high, but I don't mind the Titans at 3K, especially with Sean Watson turning the football over as much as he have and the amount of sacks that he's taken. So like at 3K, I don't mind that. Like it's not incredibly too high. It's not like you're talking about paying up for $4,400 for the Cowboys or $3,900 for the Chiefs. Like even going with somebody at this 3K range in the Titans, like I don't think that is out of question if you have the money and you can fit them in. I do think you could look at the Titans at 3K. And
Yeah.
then other than that, maybe the Jets at $2,800 against the Patriots at
Yep.
home, but, that seems like a really ugly game that probably not gonna be a lot of pass volume to be able to create turnovers, so and that's where also, like, the Chargers, you could easily play the Chargers if you wanted to, like, we talk about it all the time, these really high scoring affairs,
Mm-hmm.
all you really need is a pick six,
Yep.
fumble return for a touchdown, and they pay off, and nobody's gonna play them.
Agree.
So, alright. I think that's all we really need to talk about. We don't need to spend a lot of time on defenses. So, let's do our favorite thing and let's build this lineup.
Let's do it.
You can go ahead and kick it off.
Tank Dell,
I've already got him in there. So
flag plant play of the week.
I just
2.
left him in there. I knew that was coming, so I just left him in there. If we're gonna do it, I'm just gonna go ahead and do it. Let's go CJ Stroud.
All right. Calvin Ridley.
Gonna go with my guy, and we're gonna go with Nico.
All right. Let's go. I mean, this kind of might be a build where we can do both, but let's plug in Jefferson.
All right, let's get him out of the way so we can get this out of the way. We'll go Commanders, $2,400. So that leaves two running backs at a tight end at $5,600 a piece.
Okay, let's do. Actually, okay, so we have 4 receivers in. So let's do this. Let's take Jefferson out and play Hawkinson at tight end, and place do Tyreek instead of Jefferson.
So if we want to get a little different here, we could plug in Kendre Miller if we want, and that leaves us with $6,400 total. But I don't know if we necessarily need to do that. But if we wanted to, that would still put us at the range of like
Kenneth
Kenneth
Walker.
Walker.
Yeah. We could do we're 100 short of Kelly and Pacheco, which I kind of like. We could go, okay, so let's take Tyreek out, put Jefferson back in, and then just play Mark Andrews at tight end. And that works.
Well, who would we be? So at $5,300, who, if we wanted to keep it, who would, and not play Pacheco, but what options would we have here? So you'd have.
It's a bunch of trash.
What about Gus Edwards? Because Justice Hill is he? I don't think he hasn't practiced all week. So
yeah, I don't think he's gonna play, but I think it's gonna be Lamar, which I do like Lamar too this week. I think you're gonna see more Lamar runs, and they're also gonna call up Kenyon Drake, which sounds like a disaster, but I just don't see Gus Edwards getting, a zillion carries. And the Indy's issue has been through the air on defense.
just play the Cardinals defense against Dallas.
Yeah, I mean, I never. I'm always down with just playing any defense. I mean, I said I wouldn't play the Bears against the Chiefs, but last week I played the Raiders against the Bills, and the week before that I played Houston against Baltimore because it fit the build that I liked. So
if we did that, it would. So we would have no money remaining, but we keep it. We could go Stroud, Kelly, Pacheco, Tank Dell, Calvin Ridley, Nico Collins, TJ Hawkinson, Tyreek, and Cardinals D.
I'm good with it.
Yeah.
That's going to be a unique team. That's for sure.
Fire that up at a single entry. All right, let's lock that in. I like that. A little different.
Works for me.
Yeah. All right. That lineup is entered. So, Tyler, if you're still here, you've asked 47 times, so we will make sure we get to, start Goff or Love and Pittman or Josh Reynolds. I'm gonna go Goff for sure,
Goff.
and then
I'll say Pittman if the weather's semi decent. Otherwise, just go Reynolds.
yeah, and Tyler, I don't know if you can, but if you can try to be here on Sunday morning, we go live and we'll have all that information. You'll know exactly what's going on. Because it's tough right now. Weathermen don't do a very good job, and I'm damn sure not going to try to play one on Thursday nights to try to play what's going to happen with this storm and everything else. So, Tyler, if you can tune in on Sunday, we'll definitely have a much better answer. But right now, I would go Goff and Pittman in this
Agree.
situation. So, anyways, all right. I appreciate everybody checking it out. I appreciate everybody rocking with us. Week 3 is. I hope everybody has a good week 3. Let's win some money this weekend, and let's try to win some money this weekend. Slate's a little bit different. We have the double. Monday night games again this week, so that should be interesting. I dabbled a little bit in the 2-game slate with some showdowns, so it was kind of fun. So this week, I will say this Monday's slate looks better than last week, because last week was so gross.
Yeah, I barely played last weekend as the games were just so bad.
Yeah, but I couldn't help myself, and I played a little bit. So, and actually built some decent lineups because I had some that with both Jerome Ford and Jalen Warren. So,
Okay,
thankfully,
nice.
we don't got to mess with Najee Harris on this slate because
God,
he's dead. Anyways. Like I said, hope everybody has a great week 3. Be sure if you haven't already, you can jump into our Discord. It's absolutely free. You can go over to our YouTube channel, and there's a link in there. You can jump into our Discord, absolutely free. If you have any questions or anything like that. If not, be sure to let's win that money this week. If you're not already, please subscribe to whatever you're listening to this to. We really appreciate it. And leave a rating and review if you're listening to this on podcast forum. So that being said, hope everybody has a great week 3. Once again, we out.